Vance, the outgoing district attorney, wants to charge President Trump, former President Trump. There's no doubt in my mind about that because his legacy has been tarnished. I think his coup de grace is to hopefully indict Trump, but if he couldn't do that, well, then he indicted Trump in name, at least the Trump organization.
The Trump Organization and its longtime chief financial officer were formally indicted in New York on Thursday. They're accused of scheming to avoid paying state and city taxes on corporate perks and benefits for nearly 2 decades. The former president was not named in the charges and is calling the Manhattan District Attorney's investigation a political witch hunt. His defense team believes that he is their ultimate target. I am joined by Vinoo Varghese. He is a criminal defense attorney and a former prosecutor. Vinoo, you just heard Jeff saying that ultimately President Trump might be the target, and lawyers for the Trump Organization have said that the charges brought against Allen Weisselberg and the company are for crimes that other district attorneys and even the IRS would not prosecute. So let's start off just by explaining, if you would, how serious the charges are that Weisselberg and the Trump Organization are facing, and what sort of penalties might they carry?
The general public, these are going to be considered serious charges, right? You've charged Trump's #1 guy, his CFO, and you've charged the organization. But in reality, when you take a look at these charges, most of them are not that heavy. Most of them are felonies, punishable by up to probation. There is one charge, grand larceny in the 2nd degree, which is a C felony in New York, which is punishable by up to 15 years in prison. But the likelihood of that is remote, that even if convicted, Weisselberg would get anywhere near that amount because he's a first-time offender. He's got no prior contacts with the criminal justice system. And there is a cloud of the political prosecution hanging over this case. So in essence, there's a lot here. I mean, there's a lot of detail, but these aren't the kind of cases that normally, they charged him with stealing from the IRS. But the IRS has not charged him with stealing from the IRS. So that's something here to be considered.
Yeah, and you mentioned the cloud of politics hanging over it. How much might that factor in? And then the heart of the matter is obviously that former President Trump was not named in Thursday's indictments, but he was the head of the company during the time period when the alleged crimes happened. Do you think that prosecutors could have charged the former president? And if they made the deliberate decision not to, why not?
I think at present, they don't have enough to charge, President Trump. I clearly believe that Vance, the outgoing district attorney, wants to charge President Trump, former President Trump. There's no doubt in my mind about that because his legacy has been tarnished. And that's why he chose not to run again. And that's why we're going to have a new district attorney come January. So I think his coup de grace is to hopefully indict Trump. But if he couldn't do that, well, then he indicted Trump in name, at least the Trump Organization, and some people close to Trump. So I don't believe there is enough. I believe that they're hoping that Weisselberg will flip once he's tasted a little bit of jail and that they will hopefully have him come in because they clearly met with them. They would have met with the lawyers to try to convince Weisselberg to flip on Trump. That didn't happen. So now they've arrested him and they're hoping that that pressure will weigh heavily on him and he'll flip now, but that remains to be seen.
So that might be part of the prosecution's strategy. Let's talk about the defense strategy. How do you think attorneys for Weisselberg and the Trump Organization will fight these charges? What will be at the heart of their strategy?
Well, there's going to be basically two ways that they're going to go. One is to show that some of these deductions were not necessary to be counted, or that they aren't what they make them out to be. One of the elements in a tax fraud case is materiality, meaning important or significant. So what's not in the indictment is how much did Weisselberg pay over this 10 to 15 year period in taxes, because if the amount that he paid was far in excess of the amount that they said he didn't pay, well, then the question becomes, is this a material, was this an oversight? Material. And that's how the defense lawyers are going to play it. They're going to the extent that they will concede anything, they will say that it was an oversight and far outweighed by the amount of taxes he actually paid.
So Vinoo, the charges, obviously, as you and I have discussed, don't end the Manhattan DA's investigation into the Trump Organization. If Weisselberg doesn't flip, because we've discussed that might be the prosecution strategy here, but if he doesn't, where do you think the investigation goes from here? And do you think the charges could be brought against the former president in that case?
I think without direct evidence of illegality, which they've had Trump's tax returns now since December. So, they may still be going through that. I mean, they've had now, several months to go through it. They've brought in an outside team. It's possible that Vance is waiting till to the eve of his leaving to announce the indictment against Trump. But I think that it's going to be difficult without somebody who's going to say that Donald Trump knew that these were illegal payments and what the company was, that he knew exactly what he was doing and signed off on it and approved it. The problem for the company is that they're going to have difficulty now doing business because the company is now under criminal indictment. So that's going to cause them problems logistically in terms of securing credit and other, securing access to credit. Banks may shut them down, may shut it down. So that's the problem that the company faces. But as far as the former president goes, I think we are, anything right now to say he's going to be charged would be pure speculation.
All right, Vinoo Varghese, thank you so much for joining me.